Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist worldwide.
You'll have to be patient with me tonight. I'm a little bit under the weather. I thought about postponing the show, but I just wanted to do it so badly. I just wanted to come on the air and just do this evening's broadcast so badly that I thought, well, maybe everybody can put up with a sniffle. So I'm highly medicated. I feel pretty good, but I do sound a little bit like Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. Well, not quite, you know. Sounds like Orc Mischief to me, that kind of thing. I can't really do Treebeard, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm a little bit on the under the weather side. We got Skepticon around the corner too, so I'm trying to get myself squared away before the largest free thought event in the world happens this coming weekend in Springfield, Missouri. A lot of folks going to be a part of that event. Richard Carrier is going to be there. David Fitzgerald, R.N. Raw is going to be there. Greta Christina. Shelley Segal is going to be there. I'll be giving a presentation on Saturday morning. And if you want to find out more about the event, it's going to be amazing. You can go to skepticon.org. Tonight's show is very near and dear to my heart. When I first started the website, thethinkingatheist.com, I was in the closet. I was anonymous. And I was rattled and a little bit scared about what would happen if my identity became public. I'm an Oklahoma boy, and we have churches and God and Jesus everywhere. And I was fresh out of my former faith and looking all around me in this sort of strange new world. And I didn't know any atheists. I didn't really know what to do with the word atheist. It's not like I chose it. It just happened to define where I was. I was tapping away at religion left and right and up and down. And I finally came to the point where I thought, I just can't reconcile this stuff anymore. I can't excuse it anymore. And I just don't believe. And I wanted to get the word out and to be a part of the conversation. And I wanted some community, but I also knew I couldn't do it with my face and my name, at least not yet. And so I created a website called The Thinking Atheist. The Thinking Atheist is an idea, it is an icon, it is a reminder to us all to remain thinking. It's not a person, it certainly isn't me. In a world of great thinkers like Dr. Steven Pinker and Christopher Hitchens and so many others, there's no way I would ever have the hubris to call myself that. But I think we should all have our brains engaged. We come from a culture where things begin to not make sense, and they say, you're thinking too hard. Stop thinking. Start feeling. Take it on faith, as if faith is a virtue. And as we talked to Dr. Peter Boghossian last week, we were talking about how faith is really kind of a contagion. It's a poor way to live. I feel, I think, I have hairs on the back of my neck, I suspect, and it's not the same as a reasonable expectation based on the facts. Faith is believing something without having the evidence to believe it, which is not a virtue. And I wanted to create an environment where, let's think about it, whatever it is, religion, or politics, or life, or relationships, or whatever. Let's just remain engaged. And for a couple of years, I sat behind the scenes. I don't even think I gave my first name until at least 2010, possibly the first part of 2011. And I had these fears that I would suffer some consequences that I wasn't yet ready to deal with. And I felt guilty for not being more bold. I felt like I was a liar in some ways because I hadn't yet shown my face, because I was behind the scenes. And from time to time, somebody would come across the comment page and they would say something. Why don't we know who you are, you coward? or, they would try to out me on the internet. If he's not going to do it, we're going to out him for him. And, it was a very difficult time. It's hard on my family. It created some difficulties navigating through some of this with my employer. And I'm not exactly a young man. And the idea of a huge course correction was I to lose my job. And I had to walk softly and slowly. I had to sort of take my time. And even now, I don't know if I did it right. I look back and I think, well, it is what it is. Dan Barker preached behind the pulpit for 2 years as a non-believer as he tried to figure out what to do with the rest of his life. He was at a point where he's like, this is my only skill. This is all I know how to do. What am I going to do? So he preached, and he sort of made them more like humanist messages and make the world a better place messages and those types of things. But, imagine the conflict he was going through at night. He was an atheist, but he wasn't out. I was an atheist, but I wasn't out. And the idea of saying the word to other people, it's like taking a match to an open field, a dry field. You just set that wildfire aflame, and there's just no way that you're going to stop it. You're not going to get it back. So if you do it, you better make sure that you know what you're doing. I had an email from a list. I had so many emails that I obviously can't cover them all. I'm not going to give anyone's name tonight. These people have trusted me in this show with their identity and their anonymity. And I want to make sure that we honor that because many are in difficult situations. Our first letter says this. First of all, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for this podcast, and thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone. I'm not lost. I'm not evil. I'm not in rebellion. I'm not stupid. And I'm not crazy. I'm still only currently in 8th grade. I want to get a good education to hopefully fulfill my dream of being an astronomer and physicist. But now this amazing education that my parents provide has slightly become a mix of soaking up all the information I can and wanting to put my head through a wall. I can see the blindfolds they live behind. I can see the haze in their eyes. But whenever I try to tell them that there's another way to see the world, they plug their ears and tighten the blindfold even further. I want to shake them by their shoulders, but I only end up silenced and shaking my head. I have identified as an atheist internally for only about 18 months. I've gone to an explicitly Christian college preparatory school in Oklahoma all my life, and I've never been taught about the ice ages, primitive humans, the universe, observable or otherwise, or dinosaurs, aside from the quote-unquote fact that they coexisted with Adam and Eve and miraculously developed the half-foot-long teeth after Eve had sinned. And certainly not evolution by natural selection. I have, however, been taught that the earth is 6,000 years old, and that the reason we have cancer, sickness, parasites, and evil in the world is that Eve sinned because of a talking snake in a magic garden that didn't exist. I guess I really started to lose my faith with the beginning of a new chapel added into our schooling that's been going on the past 2 years or so. It was basically an abstinence class disguised as obedience to the big man upstairs. If you wanted to, go to the movies with that one boy in algebra class, well, that's too bad. Because being alone with someone of the opposite sex would automatically cause sexual desires. Now, you tell me how well these messages would go over to a large group of 12 and 13-year-old girls. The thought of going back to this class and rediscussing the, quote, perfect and traditional marriage makes my stomach turn. The class didn't even mention the large and vast number of sexualities that have been observed and documented. If you were anything but straight as a board, then you were automatically in league with the devil. I don't even know what the church would do with the term asexuality. The thought makes me laugh. It was taught that wives were to submit to their husbands on all accounts. If you divorce a woman and then become remarried, you have committed adultery. I know that this is mentioned in Matthew 5. Note that this decree applies only to a man. It's been drilled into our heads that men are, quote, created to be stronger, faster, and more apt to making difficult decisions than women. Furthermore, the only mention of atheism and atheists in my bi-weekly chapels and daily seminary-type classes has been that we're in rebellion. We want to be God, and that we will be held accountable for everything we say, do, hear, and think. Especially anyone who is not saved and currently goes to the school, for since they've heard the truth and don't accept it, they will burn forever. The latter point is a main reason I still fear losing my faith. I've been taught the mandatory fear of hell all my life. So much that I still to this day have nightmares of eternal torture. I hope there's something I can read, watch, or listen to that will help me lose this underlying and crippling fear of something that is not there. I hope you decide to do a podcast or can direct me to one on this topic. It's been something I've feared for a long time. My father's never spoken out loud explicitly about the subject, but he seems to identify as an agnostic. My mother and sister, on the other hand, are devoutly religious. Both inherited their faith, I might add, and started crying when I bought the God Delusion. All of my friends are very religious and constantly talk about how to combat atheists and their ideas. They talk about how lost, aggressive, and angry they are. If only they knew they were sitting 2 feet from one every day. Needless to say, this has convinced me further to stay quiet about what I really think. I apologize for how choppy this letter seems. I hope that it's a little coherent. It's the first time I've really written some of these things down. I know my story is sadly not uncommon. My life as of right now is not easier, but I already have a different perspective of the universe I'm lucky enough to live in, and the people that live alongside me. I guess you could say that the underlying reason I have to stay quiet is that I'm afraid of losing the respect of my family and friends. I dread seeing the saddened looks that I will receive when I say I don't believe. I want to be able to be accepted for who I am. I don't want to be treated as a freak. I don't want to be looked at with pity. I don't want to feel like an outsider. I am on the inside looking out, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm happier with myself as a person. I now feel freed. I guess I'll stay this way till I get to go to college. Confessing that I don't believe would be tying myself to the stake and begging for the matches to be lit. Signed, an aspiring astronomer. Thank you so much for the letter. It underlines the struggle that many face out there. It's funny how many of the emails that I received seem to echo each other. So many of the stories seem to have similar, at least emotional themes. And I understand. And you'll encounter those that call you every name in the book for not blurting it out at full volume, throwing caution to the wind. Don't listen to them. As far as the fear of hell, it's a common thing. And it's the product of having hell drilled into you from your earliest memories. I completely understand. The rational part of your brain realizes it's ridiculous, and if it existed, would be immoral. What kind of a just, benevolent deity worth our worship would ever construct such a horrible place, an unthinkable place? Worse than anything ever conceived of by any earthly tyrant. I mean, the human mind can't even imagine the kind of eternal, non-stop torture that hell would be. If we were truly in rebellion against God, if we were truly out of his will, if we were truly not deserving of heaven, if we were truly deserving of punishment, why not just vaporize us? Why not just kill us? End our lives, deny us heaven? How about temporary punishment? Why eternal agony in the flames of Hades? When I was a believer, hell made sense. Well, of course. It's a proportional judgment from a just deity. And now I look at hell and I think, who could ever worship such a being? Let's go to the switchboard. Area code 540. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who is this?
This is Hypatia. How are you?
I'm so glad you called. And by the way, anyone calling tonight does not have to give their real name. They can make one up. You can just say you'd rather remain anonymous. So don't let me put you on the spot tonight, okay?
No, not at all.
What do you have for us this evening?
I am 45 years old. I am female. I was raised Southern Baptist. I'm a Southerner, and I have children, and they have fundamentalist friends. I work, and my husband works, in an at-will state, and we work for companies that are Christian. And I've made a choice to stay in the closet, but I've given my conscience a date. I've made a date with it so that I will come out when my children are out of the spotlight, because I feel that the contract that I made with my husband, who is lukewarm at best and is very happy that I found my way, I made that contract under the conditions that I was a believer, and I made those children, and I raised them in Christian school. And they know their Bible about as well as anybody does. And I find that sitting in the stands at sports practice, I do catch more flies with honey when I just ask the questions. I was very pleased that you did the interview with Dr. Bakajian, because the Socratic way of leading people down the path is how I found it. I did not know anything about the Four Horsemen. That was not my thing. But mine came very suddenly. Just a light bulb went on. And my son actually is the one, when I was trying to teach him his Bible, he looked at me and he said, "Really? A talking snake, for real?"
That really caught on early, huh? Good for him.
Yeah, and so his questioning finally and I laughed and laughed, and I was like, yeah, it's ridiculous. So that was my moment where I said, I can't do this. I can't lead my child, the one, especially the youngest one, who's so full of questions and is very science-oriented, to be sold a bill of goods. I can't do it. So it's been the last couple of years have been very tough. As I said, I'm in the South. And the other thing is I'm still conservative in the sense that I have my Second Amendment rights, and I carry my concealed weapon, and I don't believe the government should make laws about abortion or whatever, but I find that if you're a human, you have rights, and I find it kind of barbaric that we would kill our youngest. But I also am very minded about, you shouldn't be told what you can and can't do. So, I don't have a lot of friends. Even in the atheist community, there are not that many who will tolerate an ex-Christian, because it's different than someone who I think has never believed. Some people who have never believed don't understand what it's like to carry that guilt. I don't know how I found you and your shows, but they have brought me great comfort, because you and I had the same path through Christianity and out of it, pretty much by questioning on our own. And it's just been a very long thing. I'm closeted because I owe a certain standard of protection to children and to my husband. But the day that he retires for good, which is very soon, I really won't care.
Do you fantasize about that day? I mean, you're sitting around right at a ball game, and they pray before the game, or whenever people are invoking God left and right, or they're praying before the holiday meal. Do you fantasize about the day when you can just go, "Oh, come on, guys," or just tell them if they ask you where to go to church, just tell them, "Look, I'm not a believer in any deity." Do you fantasize about that?
I have, and the thing that I find the most frustrating is my mother is still a true believer, and she's recently widowed, and so she's doubled down on it, and I made the mistake of coming out to her just before she was widowed, and now she's doubled down on the religion thing, so it's very tense with her.
So she used her faith as sort of a way to cope with the death of her life partner.
Absolutely, and I have to respect that, because while my grandmother was, 80-some years old and passed away, she's what I would call ignorant because she didn't have the internet. She didn't have access to things that would lead her out of the county she lived in her whole life. My mother, she is willfully ignorant. She has a job. She has a computer. She's not cloistered in another era.
Yeah.
So it's different. I have older relatives who I would never dream of burdening with my problem. They'd spend the last years on their knees praying for my soul. It's not worth that to me.
Yeah.
So to be closeted is in some ways a relief because I don't have to deal with people who I don't want to hurt.
Well, it also speaks to the fact that you and I don't live in a bubble. I mean, you understand that what you do and say will ripple outward. Now, all of us wish we could go out and just be loud and proud, and we need to do so as quickly as we can. But in the Deep South, you've made it a chess move. You've decided at this measure you're going to wait until it doesn't adversely affect your children. You're raising your children as free thinkers?
I am. In my home, luckily one has gone on to college and one is still in the home. But I came out to them and said, we have a Book of Mormon, we have a Talmud, we have a Quran, we have a Holy Bible, we have all the books. Read them. Read them and know that the stories are, when my high schooler, at the time he was high school, I said, read Hero of a Thousand with a Thousand Faces. I said, you will understand. I read this in college and it started to percolate with me, but I was so indoctrinated I could see. So he read that and he started to understand what I was going through, and he has adopted that on his own. And the world I am raising my children in is a world where they must deal with what is, not with what I wish it was, but what is. I cannot go in front of them and smooth the path with a shovel and take the rocks out. They must deal with the rocks, and the rocks are going to come, and if they do not have critical thinking skills to make the choices with the information that they are given, that's a crippling thing for them. So yes, I've raised them the last 2 years, 2.5.
Good for you.
As free thinkers.
Well, before I move on, if I can encourage you, you're not the only atheist gun owner. I mean, I've got a 9mm in the other room. The second thing is that I think we may do a show on abortion next year, and you're not the only one who wrestles. I think we all wrestle with the very complex issue of when does life begin. Obviously, you and I stand on the woman's right to choose. That trumps all. But I don't think it's an easy choice or decision for most. We don't want to get this one wrong. Let's continue to look and examine and educate ourselves.
It's the science of, if you say, let's put science in its rightful place, well, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's decide. And to go back to the closeted part, I did a cost-benefit thing. Who would benefit from my coming out? No one. Not now. And I would encourage the people who will get into the faces of those of us who must remain the way we are. You must understand, I'm not sitting here doing nothing. I have taken the Socratic techniques to the bleachers. I've taken it to the book club, to the bunco group, to all the places where the soccer moms are. And I know I've had at least 2 seats because they listen to me. Don't see me as the capital A atheist. I am not threatening. I'm one of them. I look like one of them. I speak like one of them. And I feel like I am doing my part where I am right now. And that's the best I can do for the atheist movement. When you talk about, why don't you come out? My own mother will say, well, you're such a hypocrite, you won't come out. Well, no, you don't understand where I'm at. And I respect the children that I have. I respect where atheists are that have never believed. And I'm glad they're out there. I want to see people with atheist tattoos and t-shirts. I want to see that. I just can't be that person right now. So please understand, we are here. I wear my Flying Spaghetti Monster pin. None of my friends know what the hell it is.
Yeah.
But every now and then I get that look in the vegetable department. I'll get that. Oh.
Somebody will know what it's about. You feel like you found a kindred spirit.
Knows.
Good for you.
Just for 5 minutes, I do. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for giving us a voice, and thank you the most for being a gentleman. You are such a gentleman, and I have so appreciated the idea that you can get your ideas out without being so harsh. I love Matt Dillahunty. He's great, but he's like, cut it to you. But
I guess we all have our styles, but you're very, very kind. You're going to make me start crying here. I'm already diminished in health, and you're going to just make me start bawling like a child. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening and for the kind words and for your perspective. It sure means a lot. I appreciate you.
I say bless you, but Whatever.
Whatever. Hey, take care of yourself out there, okay?
You as well.
I will see you later. You know, it's funny. The position I had on a great many things changed as a result of walking away from delusion. The position I had on non-heterosexuals changed. And the position I had on a woman's right to choose changed. You know, it used to be abortion was murder. Abortion was taking a helpless life and horribly murdering it. And I still wrestle with abortion. I've mentioned this a few times in the past. And there are many atheists, I think, who they side with a woman's right to choose, but at the same time they understand that this is serious business. We need to be doing our best to continue to examine and understand. It means a hard discussion, but it needs to be an honest one. And we may cover that down the way. It's been kind of a heavy topic. I've been guilty of purposefully putting it off for that reason. It's just we've covered so much heavy stuff lately. In fact, for that reason as well, I'm lightening things up over the holidays. We're going to do a show coming up here in a few weeks called Holiday Heathens. And it's going to be me and Matt Dillahunty and Jamila Bay and Aaron Raw. We're all just going to sit around the round table and just talk for about 90 minutes to 2 hours. That should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to get into the Jesus story again before we get into the Christmas season and a few other things like that. So it should be a pretty good next 6 weeks. By the way, and I just have to, this is not bragging. This is just me being an excited kid. You know, when I started this radio podcast on Blog Talk Radio in 2010, I would have been happy to have cracked the top 500. I mean, I knew there were thousands of hosts out there and thousands of shows. And for the past almost 2 months, out of 15,000 live active radio shows on Blog Talk Radio, we are in the top 5, which is wild, isn't it? It's not a sports show. It's not an entertainment show. It's not a movie review show. It's not a comedy show. It's not exactly mainstream. Right now, we're at number 3 out of 15,000. People are listening. People are engaging. People want to be part of the conversation. And more people than you think, from more different and more diverse backgrounds than you think. It's amazing. And the show wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and for your participation, for listening, for putting up with me, for spreading the word, telling your friends. Thank you. Thank you. This show is one of the highlights of my life. It really is. I had a message from it just says anonymous. I wanted to say young man, young woman. I honestly don't know. Let me read the letter. It says, I'm in my mid-30s and I work for a rural school system where I'm fairly well respected by my colleagues. I've been a non-believer since I was 14, but I'm still closeted for several reasons. First, I'm afraid my coming out as an atheist will jeopardize my father's livelihood. He is still pastoring churches. And I've seen pastors removed from their churches because their children were homosexual or became pregnant out of wedlock. I can only imagine how a small church here would react to finding out that their pastor's son is a non-believer. Second, I'm concerned about my family. My entire immediate family is strongly religious, and I don't know how they would react to my atheism. Family is very important to me, and I don't want to do anything to jeopardize the relationship I have with them. I know that ethically I should be honest with them, but I can't muster the courage to do it. And finally, I worry about my career. I've worked hard at my job, and there are possible upward moves for me in the future. My superintendent is an ordained minister, as is my direct supervisor. As of now, they both trust me, but my atheism would undoubtedly strain that trust and might possibly put a wall across my career path because of their and the public's reaction to it. My hope is that someday when my father's retired from preaching and I'm where I want to be in my career, I'll be able to be open and honest about my atheism. Or maybe one day I will see atheism shed the stigma it now has in my small, rural southern community. Thank you for everything you do to move us to the point where I can feel free to be who I am. Had a letter in from a young couple, who said that we live in a small conservative town with what seems reasonably a church on every other street corner. And where there aren't churches, there are certainly a plethora of people willing and wanting to spread the word of the Lord and save you and your children's souls. My husband was raised in a Christian home, went through 13 years of Christian school, a church on every Wednesday, twice on Sunday, and any other time the doors were open. I was raised in an abusive, alcoholic home by my psychopathic atheist father and stepmom, visiting my devoutly Catholic, with 10 kids, mother and stepfather every other weekend. A few years ago, when my husband really started to question his faith, to put it authentically, the shit hit the fan. There were long, drawn-out conversations and arguments in person, on Facebook, between family and friends. There were books shared and passed along, which were, "Here, read this book, this will help you," was a common theme. There was anger and hostility and heated words exchanged. There were whispered telephone conversations where things like, "What did we do wrong? How can they do this to their children? We spent all that money for Christian school." I even lost my best friend of 12 years who just couldn't believe I could do this to our kids. And this was all brought about by simple questioning. So on that one lonely night, as my husband and I lay in bed, as we looked at each other and said, "We don't believe anymore. We're atheists. What do we do now?" At the time, we were living with my in-laws. They helped us care for our 3 girls. My husband was just starting a new job at a science-focused business, but where the staff was largely outspokenly religious. There's an interesting concept. So in those moments, as brand new atheists, did we quietly agree to keep it to ourselves? Absolutely. Everything in life is about cost versus benefit, and in our case, the cost at this point outweighs the benefit. My husband works so I can stay home with our kids. Is it worth him jeopardizing his job? Definitely not. Is it worth losing the only family we have, considering I already don't have a relationship with either of my parents? Especially my father for previously stated reasons, and my mom mostly because of religion. Definitely not. Is it worth the further strain or drama or trauma it could cause our family, and furthermore our children's relationships with them? Probably not. Maybe someday we will live openly, maybe not. Maybe some will call us cowards, and yet others will shake their heads in understanding. One thing is for sure, though. We thank you, we thank your community and all the others out there. Although we are quieter, we are listening, we are paying attention, and we are still seeking for that courage to find our voice. Don't give up on us. I can already hear, and in some ways in my own mind, I hear myself saying it. Find that opportunity to say something. I have this fantasy about all the people who are under the radar, at the same time, coming out and saying, "We do not believe in fairy tales anymore. I am an atheist, or an agnostic, or non-religious. I'm one of the nuns. I don't buy it. I have a personal relationship with reality." If we all came out at the same time, can you imagine? Because you know the numbers are significant. The people who are waiting in the shadows, right? They're playing chess, not checkers. This is one baby step at a time. They're waiting, hopefully crafting the opportunity for the day they get to say it, for the day that it's okay, for the day that they know that their parents aren't going to cancel their college tuition and possibly adversely alter the trajectory of their lives because they don't buy their mom and dad's religion. The day that they don't worry about a spouse packing his or her bags and taking the kids, and possibly denying custody or attempting to because, well, you have no morals. You're a bad parent. Because you're not worried about walking into the office one day and being called into a meeting with the supervisor, and you're released not because you're an atheist, no, but because they found another reason, right? You have poor communication skills. Oh, we found something that looks inappropriate, and we have to let you go, or just a layoff. And if they choose the people who are not going to be kept on, well, you're a convenient choice. Everybody else prays at the company parties. They bless the food. They thank God, and they've got crosses and emblems and religious symbols on their desks and on their apparel. They talk about church on Sunday, and they pray, and God is part of the fabric of their lives, you make them uncomfortable. She fantasized about the day you can go in and just say it. I don't believe. I live in the real world. All of you are much too old to have invisible friends. I don't know if you need to say that, but it would feel good. Aren't you a bit old to have invisible friends? I use the line sometime. Not when someone is asking me questions, but when an especially snotty theist comes my way. You fantasize about the time when you can wear the t-shirt. You can put the flying spaghetti monster decal on the back of your car. Or the Darwin fish with the legs. Or the T-Rex eating the Jesus fish. They've got that one at evolvefish.com. And there's a free plug for you folks, by the way. It's a great, great little icon that you can stick on the back of your car or whatever. It's got this T-Rex and he's eating the Jesus fish. It's awesome. It's just awesome. I mean, humor is such a good weapon, in my opinion, in this fight. And there are some people who say, look, if we would all just get it out, just say it. Your silence is part of the problem. Sitting on our hands gets us nowhere, right? Us saying nothing is the reason that religion is run unchecked for so long. These people are running the show out here. They're steamrolling over everybody else. If we don't speak up, we're part of the problem. Yeah, I have that voice in the back of my head. And you know what? In a utopian world, yeah, we could all run out and shout it from the rooftops. But I am a true believer that it is not that simple. Having come from it myself, having experienced those things myself, I had a segment in my book where I talked about lying in bed at night, just in conflict, having an argument with myself. Should I? Shouldn't I? What if I do? What will happen? God, it's real. It's real, and it shouldn't be marginalized or minimized by people who are lifelong atheists or who live in cultures where it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. And what you do does affect other people. I know many atheists don't like to say this. I just do what I'm going to do. I'm an individual. Well, good for you. Congratulations. You are now an island unto yourself. There are many of us who will count the cost of what we do and how it affects other people. And I think that absolutely has merit. What I say and do does affect other people. People I care about. People who are members of my family. What you do affects spouse, children, parents, job, whatnot. Should we be working to the point where we say something? Absolutely. Should we be being as bold as we can possibly be? Yes. Should we be playing chess so that we can ultimately win the game? Yes. But is it always prudent to just go out and blurt it out through the bullhorn? That's just wrong. It's just not the real world. I was browsing some of the ex-Muslim websites. Those people are really in the shadows. In fact, I was going to do a show a while back, Islam and Women, and the ex-Muslims that I had correspondence with would not go on the radio with me. They would provide me information, and they would give me resources, and they would have sort of an email dialogue, but they did not they could not yet go on the radio and have their voices heard. Because in Islam, the penalty for apostasy isn't, oh, we're going to beat your kid up on the playground, or we're going to fire you, or we're going to exile you or banish you from the family or cut off your college tuition or not invite you to Thanksgiving dinner. The penalty for apostasy in Islam is death. If you're of another religion, well, of course you're looked on with contempt. But if you were an adherent of Islam and you left, you are worse than the worst. It is a huge, huge thing to them. And the penalty for apostasy in Islam is death. And these people know it. So there they are behind the scenes. The Council for Ex-Muslims has a great resource. And I think there's an ex-Muslim website. And so they do what they can. They make pseudonyms. They create identities. That doesn't protect some people anyway. Like one guy on Facebook who said, there is no God or there is no Allah. The guy who ends up in jail, prison. Jeez. Can they be effective? without quote unquote coming out? Yeah, they got to get creative. But it's possible. And they're finding complex solutions to what is a complex challenge. Area code 806. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
JB.
JB, thanks for calling the show tonight. We're talking about atheists who are not yet out. What do you have for us?
First up, I just got to get this off my chest first. I'm in the Air Force currently, so I know this isn't the military episode or the topic, but there's a ton of atheists that I know in the military. I guess I've probably really gotten lucky because the group that I've been working with throughout my career, at least, I've only been in for 4 years roughly. They've all been, for the most part, I mean, even the Christians are very kind of on the liberal side, so I've kind of been lucky on that aspect. But there's a ton that are pretty much just agnostic or full-blown atheists. So
I'm glad to hear it. Those who say there are no atheists in foxholes have apparently not looked closely into the foxhole lately, because there are a lot of them out there.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very true. It's just a matter of people wanting to talk about it, or, they're afraid to come out to anybody who's possibly a higher rank, or kind of like in any other job,
Yeah. Well, are you out with your family, friends? I mean, what's your story?
Well, I originally grew up in Amarillo, Texas, so kind of in your neck of the woods. Just the traditional Bible Belt, everything else,
Absolutely.
My mom, she was a skeptical believer, I guess you'd call it. Like, she didn't fall for all the religious BS, the faith healing, and all the anything that badly. But I haven't come out to her because I just don't really think it would help anything. Her faith is kind of holding on by a thread herself. It's kind of like, I don't want to be the thing to cut it.
Why
type
not?
Of thing.
I mean, I'm saying
point.
if she's already dealing with doubt and she's finding her faith unsatisfactory and it's hanging by a thread, why not assure her that she's not alone, that it's okay?
That's honestly, logically, that makes sense. But I guess it's just, growing up, I just feel, obviously just that uncomfortable feeling, like that foreboding to try to confront it. I think she already knows that I'm not really, I was always against the grain with all the churches we went to briefly off and on. I was always questioning. I was always kind of anti-authoritarian with a lot of the pastors and stuff here and there. But I think she still thinks that I might vaguely believe, but I just can't come to the fruition to actually tell her that I'm just a full-blown, I'm not connected to any type of belief system anymore.
Well, help me understand. If her faith is tenuous, if her religious convictions aren't all that fervent, if she's not exactly a Sunday go-to-meeting, true blue Bible-believing person, and you think she might be going through her own struggles, why not sit down and have the conversation? You can use questions. Mom, I've had some questions. Here are some of the questions I've been asking. Not necessarily showing your hand, your poker hand, but you might be, in a way, giving her permission to continue to pursue the answers to the questions in her own mind and heart. It might end up being a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, that's honestly something I might have to try looking into next time I'm on leave or back home again, whenever that is. But
only you can really take the temperature of the situation. Only you can really assess whether or not it might be worth it, or if she was at a point where she might be ready to have the conversation. But, I've found that a lot of times there are people who are literally they're almost about to bust out of their skin waiting for someone to say it, right? I wish somebody would say something about this ridiculous thing. And when you do, it gives them courage. It empowers them. It shows them that lightning did not strike you when you ask the question. And it might be an amazing conversation. It might be the kind of thing you guys talk about for years. So if it happens, send me an email and let me know, okay?
Oh, definitely.
Well, thanks for your service, man. And thanks for the call. And thanks for being a part of the podcast. It means a lot.
Oh, yeah, no problem. And I love your show. And hopefully I'll call in again soon. So
all right. Be safe over there.
Keep doing what you're doing. Bye.
All right. Take it easy. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking over my callers a little bit. Some of it is the Skype delay. Some of it is my internal brain delay. I am medicated, and occasionally you'll hear a long pause. It's because I'm hitting the mute button as I clear my throat. I do not want to do that to you. So if I check out for more than a couple of seconds, just bear with me. I'm resetting, and I'm coming back to do the next section of the show, okay? I had an email that said, I'm writing this email from my office at a ministry where I work full-time. I have over 20 years in active ministry, and I'm an atheist. I won't specify what type of ministry this is or what city it is. That might out me and I'd lose my job. I just wanted to write today to let you know that social media skeptics and their activism are the reason I'm an atheist today. About 2 years ago, I read a post on one of my Facebook friends' wall. He asked the question, would you obey God no matter what he asked of you? Of course, most of the responses were a resounding yes. Then this man, who had only announced his own atheism recently, said, what if God told you to kill your child? No responses. He then posted the story of Abraham from the Old Testament and continued with, if you say you would kill your child if God told you to, society calls you a psychopath. If religion tells you to and you obey, you're elevated in status to the father of 3 world religions. I was really uncomfortable. My cognitive dissonance was kicked into high gear. I thought, yeah, that's true. And I had to admit to myself that there's no way I would obey God in that instance. I posted as much on the thread. And the original poster said, congratulations, you're more moral than your God. And you're probably an atheist, and you don't even know it. That exchange didn't deconvert me, but it got me to question just enough, so that I went back and started reading the Bible front to finish with a critical eye. By the time I was done, I had more questions than answers. I began to study evolution for myself, and I found that the straw man picture religion paints of evolution is way off from the truth. It took me a year to realize I wasn't a believer any longer. I called myself agnostic for a year. And then just this week, I finally accepted the nasty word atheist as a description of myself. I'm an atheist working in a Christian culture and ministering complete bull to people looking for hope on a daily basis. I'm a member of the Clergy Project, and the support I found there helps me cope. I long for the day I can make a living being honest. Thanks for listening. I'm off to spend my day playing the role of my lifetime. Wow. And it's almost like being a pulpit preacher. How would you get through it? You would dread every day you had to stand up there, every prayer that you were asked to give, every platitude from the scriptures that you gave to someone in need, everything you were required to do by the board of deacons. You would just be miserable in your heart. But for many, especially for those who have mouths to feed, mortgages to pay, and life responsibilities, and it'd be reckless. It would self-destruct to just come out. Have nothing. You'd lose your home. You'd lose your ability to buy groceries for your kids. Might affect the course of their education. Could you afford school? What would happen? Had another email that said, I'm 16. A lot of teenagers. I'm 16. I live in Kentucky. I've recently become an atheist. I've grown up in a very devout Roman Catholic community. My father and his side of the family are all devout Catholics, and they think terrible things about anyone who doesn't think like they do. When I was 10, my mother and I didn't go to church 2 weeks in a row. My father told me we'd both go to hell. I was 10, and he told me this. He's also threatened to disown me. My cousin that came out as an atheist at the age of 30 is scorned by all my family now. From the time I was in preschool to 8th grade, I went to a private Catholic school, attended Catholic summer camps, and have received 4 of the 7 sacraments. I'm not sure how to go about coming out to my family. I've considered continuing acting strong in my Catholic faith, reading at Mass, volunteering for children's liturgy, and being a Eucharistic minister just to please my family. I used to be strong in the faith until I was exposed to non-religious people. Once I began listening and questioning them, I became aware of how much the Bible doesn't make sense and how much of religion is nonsense. I never fully believed what the church taught me. I've always approved of gay marriage and never understood how the bread and wine could just transform into the body and blood of Jesus. My family didn't even know about those thoughts, though. Those outrageous stories in the Bible I would try to dismiss as made up and just trying to teach a lesson. Once questioned about my faith, I could never give real answers, which led me to question what I did believe. I'm terrified that if my friends and family found out about my beliefs, they will exile me. I've always been known as the good little innocent Catholic girl who did no wrong. I'm afraid if they find out, they'll be rude to me, not talk to me, or treat me like the plague. If you could give me any advice about what you'd recommend doing, it would be appreciated. Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to give you a professional opinion. I will tell you about my own situation. Maybe it'll help you, okay? I've already said at the beginning of the show that I waited until I felt I could come out to actually show my face, give out my name. In fact, it was at the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention in 2011. I took the stage and gave a speech in front of 300 people. For the very first time. I was sitting out there in the audience. I thought my heart was going to explode. And I was delighted to be there. I was so excited. I mean, it was a positive day, but it was also a little bit ominous. This is going to be out there. This is going to be on the internet. This is going to be out there. And there's no going back. And that moment came after some moving around of the puzzle pieces to get me there. And for you, it might be a year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. When it came to my family, I started with questions. Rather than go to them and say, the story of Methuselah simply doesn't make sense. This is stupid. I asked them questions. Hey, the science shows that the average lifespan of humans in that time period was usually no more than 50. But the Bible says Methuselah lived to be 969. Can you explain this? I'm curious. I'm doing some digging. You know, I was reading at the U.S. Geological Survey, and they were talking about the age of the Earth. And they were talking about evidence for and against any sort of global water event, a flood, Noah's flood. And there seems to be no evidence of any global event whatsoever. Can you help me with this? I'm just curious. You know, the book of Matthew and the book of Luke give differing accounts of Jesus Christ, like the basics of his story. You know, where he was born. One book says there was a death decree by Herod, and another one doesn't even mention Herod. One book says they go back to Nazareth like nothing ever happened after he's born, and another book says that they go flee, go into hiding. One book says that Jesus' last words were this, and another book says that Jesus' last words were that. There are 3 differing accounts of who found the open tomb after Jesus was crucified. I mean, they contradict each other. Can you help me with that? How come one of the Bible stories says that they found the fig tree that Jesus had cursed dried up the following morning, but in this account, it dried up immediately right in front of their eyes? How did that happen? Now, they're going to probably go on the defensive, and they're going to circle the wagons, and they're not stupid. They're going to see, Houston, we have a problem. This person doesn't buy it. This person's got problems, and they're going to go into rescue mode. But I found that questions, if you are going to broach it, in my opinion, are the best way to start. All right, they're going to be going into the deep water, but maybe we can go in on the shallow end and get them there that direction instead of just tossing them off the diving board, Ultimately, you also need to remember that the religious people in your life are claiming for themselves the right to own and live a worldview. To them, this is a sacred right. You don't get to cross into their wheelhouse. You don't get to go up there and cross that boundary on them, but for some reason, because you are not religious, quite often they will assume that it's quite perfectly fine to cross a boundary with you, and boundaries are important. In my own family, we had years of discussions, often heated discussions. We didn't ever find resolution, and even now my parents believe I'm going through the worst midlife crisis in the history of midlife crises. They probably pray for me nightly. They may be praying for me right now. They're embarrassed and ashamed. They feel that I am their failing. If only they'd been a better parent. If only they'd done a better job of showing me the love of Jesus. If only we'd gone to church more. If only. I mean, the absolute arrogance of them saying that my own life is a product of what they do even today is ridiculous. But it's going to happen. And they would paw at me, and they'd continue to pepper me with emails and questions. And I ultimately came to a point when I said, there are boundaries in my life. Right, here's a boundary. I've drawn it around my home. This place is a happy place. It's a peaceful place. It's a drama-free place. And as far as my life's concerned, it's a secular place. And while you can pray for me till you're blue in the face and knock yourself out, doesn't bother me a bit. You do not get to come over here and pound on my door. And you do not get to tell me day and night that I'm broken or in rebellion or shameful. You don't get to bring negativity into my circle. Yes, your family. Yes, your blood. Yes, I know you're my mother and father, and I do love you. And I want to have a relationship with you. But as I'm not pounding on your door, as I'm not over there saying, you're broken, I'm going to fix you, you do not get to do this to me. And if you can abide those boundaries and understand that I'm an adult who has earned the right, I've earned the right to own and live my own worldview, to pursue truth as I see fit, to ask the hard questions and expect damn good answers. If you do not see that and will not acknowledge it and will not stop with all the preaching and the proselytizing and all the insanity, then you will not be welcome here. And we will not have a relationship. That's not what I want. I want to be a family. I want to be close. I want to celebrate the things we do have in common. So please, just relax. Just respect these boundaries, just as you would ask us to respect yours. And I had to draw those really hard lines in the sand. And it's been a tenuous peace. There is a peace. We don't speak much. I spoke to my father for the first time in 6 months, just a couple weeks ago. It was this weird moment, It was all small talk. But at least we were talking. We didn't talk about religion, didn't talk about anything important at all. It was small talk to the point of being conspicuous small talk. We were both just standing there. And there's this huge undercurrent of stuff going on between us. This is the man who just said he wasn't going to have fellowship with an unbelieving son the day after Father's Day. We hadn't spoken. We happened to see each other at a family function, and we talked. Boundaries were respected, and we actually got to be, for that few moments, father and son. I can't promise it's going to be easy for you. But I do believe, I am absolutely convinced that a truthful life is one worth living. I think you're alive in a time when the information is becoming so available that you're going to see that more and more of us out there have your back. And one day when you have kids, your goal's not going to be to grow up little atheists, right? Your goal is to teach them how to examine the world and discover what is true. To ask these questions, to be curious, to be excited about learning, to understand how amazing it is to have this short blip on this earth. To embrace life, to just suck the marrow out of every moment of life. Because there is no tomorrow that we know of. There's no evidence that there's any heaven. There's no paradise in the sky. There's no Xanadu. There's just us. We got one shot. We need to take care of each moment, take care of each other, take care of this planet. We need to take care of every day we have. Forgive me for going off on that long explanation, but something I thought that you might benefit from tonight. Area code 630. Thanks for calling the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. What's your name, or what would you like to call yourself?
This is Drew. How are you, Seth?
I'm well, except for the sniffles. Thanks for putting up with those tonight. What can I do for you, my friend?
Well, I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and what's interesting about living in the Chicago suburbs is that Chicago's kind of cosmopolitan in that people are socially religious, but you don't hear about it that often. It's not spoken about openly. So I'm at the point now where I can come out to my family, but I don't know if that's what I want to do yet. I mean, they may know, they may not know. I came dangerously close to telling my mother. We were having a discussion a couple months ago, and she's a spiritual person, and she asked me point blank if she were to get into a horrible car accident, would I pray to God? And I told her no. And that was pretty much it.
Well, did you tell her what you would do in the case of an accident? I've had a similar conversation. Oh, I'd rush to the hospital. I'd be at your side. I'd make sure your loved ones were involved. I would make sure you had the best possible care. I mean, did you get a chance to go down that road?
No. I think my mother's convinced herself that I'm an agnostic. And to me, atheist and agnostic are the same thing. It's just that one is kind of the safer version of atheist, and the other one is just kind of the commitment word. So, like I said, I mean, I'm kind of one of those people that, like, I can come out to my family and to my close friends. I'm not quite at that point yet.
Well, whenever it's right for you, let us know how it goes, okay?
All right. Thanks, Seth.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. Area code 210. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who is this, or what would you like to call yourself?
I'm Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for waiting on me. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, I'm 23 and I live in Texas. I grew up Word of Faith Christian, the name it, claim it peoples.
Oh, yeah. You guys were hardcore Pentecostal, tongue-speaking Pentecostal charismatic types out there, huh?
And I was definitely one of them until about 3 years ago. And my best friend got very, very sick. And I had known her since I was a child, and we were very, very close. And so she was really sick, and so we prayed over her, and we confessed over her, and we did everything we were supposed to do. And after 3 years of fighting, she passed away. And so she was only 19, and I was 20 at the time, and it was really hard for me to deal with, and I didn't understand why God would let her die if it was supposed to work, because we did everything right. And I kind of was okay with that until about 3 months later, the pastor's wife at our church preached a message saying grief was a sin and we shouldn't grieve. And it was really targeted toward her family and specifically toward me for grieving her death. Because
why is grief a sin? Oh, forgive me for interrupting you. You were a step ahead of me. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I honestly have no clue, and it was really hard, and a lot of people in the church attacked me and her family. And so from then I kind of just separated from that aspect of Christianity, but I still believed in God, and I thought maybe God was just different, and I kind of got on this sin is if it hurts you or hurts someone else, it's sin, and everything else is fine. And then I left the place I was living and moved away from my family, and at that point I kind of still wanted to believe in God but wasn't really sure. And about a year ago was when I started actually questioning the true existence of God. I felt comfortable doing that, and since I asked myself the question, is God real, I kind of was like, no, he's not. It took me about 6 months to come out to my really close friends, and they're all theists, and they're actually perfectly fine with me being an atheist. They don't really care. They're kind of like, oh, whatever, you know.
That's weird for a theist. Wouldn't they be normally worried about you going to hell and your immortal soul? I mean, the Word of Life Church, they believe the Bible literally.
Yeah, my closest friends I made since I left my family, and they don't go to church all the time, and they're very much, they believe in God, and they're very spiritual, but they're kind of like, everyone goes to heaven, and so they're Christian, but they're kind of really lax on it, and I guess that's why I get along with them. But my family is still very much Word of Faith, name it, claim it, and I haven't come out to them because I kind of just don't know what will happen. I'm kind of afraid either I will lose them completely not only that is it would look really bad with their friends. I mean, their youngest daughter is an atheist. What did they do wrong? And so I would hate for my parents to have to deal with that. I'm not really in a situation where it would harm me. I'm completely independent. I'm not in college, so it's not like that. I just would hate for my parents to have to deal with that stigma of me doing that. And then also I would probably get completely cut out of their life, and I don't want that to happen. But I feel bad lying because even a few months ago, my dad straight up asked me how I felt, and I couldn't not tell the truth, but I couldn't lie either. So I kind of just sat there and stared at him and didn't know what to say because I just couldn't come out. And
you didn't say anything? Wait, what happened in that moment?
They know that I don't believe in creation, and I don't believe in like the Old Testament stories in the Bible. And they kind of always say, as long as you love Jesus, we don't care. We still love you as long as you love Jesus. And we were talking about Noah's flood, and I just kind of looked at my dad and was like, that's absurd. Like, I don't see how you could believe that. And then he was like, well, you still believe in God, right? And that's where you side. And I just kind of just stared at him, and I didn't really answer and just kind of shrugged. And he was like, okay, good. And so I never really answered. He just kind of took my shrug.
He painted a yes into your silence is essentially what happened, right?
Yes, because I guess they couldn't believe that their daughter would not believe in God. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's really a challenging situation. I would love to come up to them, and I fantasize about being able to just be like, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in your God. I think he's crazy.
Well, I don't think you have to be cruel about it. Look, I've said before that if we waited only until it was not going to hurt anyone's feelings out there, we'd never say anything. And I love the compassion in you. I mean, I understand that you are so sensitive to the fact that you do not want to hurt these wonderful people. You have a tremendous love for them. And I think you should do it or not do it on your timing. But the fact also remains, and keep this in the back of your mind, that if we only waited until it was convenient, until no one's feelings were ever hurt, until no one ever had some confusion or conflict, then no one would have ever said anything and no inroads would be made. So if you ever get to that point where you think you'd like to say the words out loud and where it's time, even if it does cause your parents some consternation, understand that it might be a healthy thing for them to see a rational life in their own inner circle lived right in front of their eyes. And my hope is that they would still see you as the loving daughter, and they would, the consequences wouldn't be too enormous. I mean, I can't really speak to them, but that would be my hope, okay?
So, and I want to say thank you to you also, because I don't have any atheist friends or know anyone personally who's an atheist, and so most of my time is spent on the internet and listening to your podcast and other podcasts like this one, and you've really helped me feel comfortable, and not that I'm insane or anything like that. So thank you so much.
Well, if you're a part of this community, you have friends, okay? I promise you that. Thank you so much for the call.
Thank you. All
right, take care. I really do mean that. I mean, geez, if we only waited for the moments where it wasn't going to rankle anybody's feathers, ruffle, is that even the right metaphor? Ruffle feathers. Rankle people or ruffle feathers. If we waited only for the moments when no one would ever get in a twist over it, well, we'd never say anything. Sometimes it's good for people to be made a little bit uncomfortable. I, to this moment, still think that it's a good thing for my mother and my devoutly religious mother and father to be made uncomfortable. Do I think that they'll ever look at the world outside of their God glasses? Nah. But I think they're adults and they shouldn't be given a pass just because they might have hurt feelings. They need to be able to see somebody living a loud, proud, secular life. I think it's healthy for them. Not necessarily pleasant, not necessarily easy. The upcoming holidays are sure going to be interesting. But I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for all the members of my family to see somebody who is living a godless life and who is living a good life. I think that's a healthy thing. Had an email that said, I'm a closet atheist Mormon in a predominantly Mormon community. All my neighbors, business associates, and family are Mormons. I'm a recently converted atheist. That's probably deconverted, right? With the exception of my wife and one brother and sister, all solid and unshakable believers, and two other siblings who are also closet atheists, no one knows. I was raised in a very orthodox Mormon family. I fully bought into the gold plates, Joseph Smith seeing God and Jesus, and our current prophet Thomas S. Monson speaking face-to-face to God. I served a 2-year mission in another country where I actively worked to convert others to Mormonism. I came home and went to the Mormon-owned school, Brigham Young University, where I met my future wife, and we married in a Mormon temple. We set to work having children as we were told to by church leaders. Funny and sad side note, my wife and I had an interview with a high-ranking church leader right before we married. He told us, "It doesn't take money to have children, it just takes faith. Don't wait to start your family." I never went anywhere near anti-Mormon information. Mormons are heavily indoctrinated to fear and avoid any information that is negative about Mormonism and paints the church in a bad light. So I never came across any information that disproved Mormonism while I was still a believer. But as I began my professional career, I started to notice little things in the world that didn't exactly line up with what I'd been taught my whole life. I'd always been taught that you can only be truly happy, a good parent, have a good family, etc., if you're a faithful Mormon. Yet I was interacting with non-Mormons all the time who were happy, moral, productive members of society. It caused a little crack in my testimony. There are dozens more examples of things that over time caused more and more cracks. Long story short, over about 2 years more and more, things just didn't add up. And eventually I had to acknowledge I no longer believed in God and Mormonism. Of course, once I was free to explore all sides of Mormonism, I unearthed an absolute mountain of evidence disproving Mormonism. Sheesh, this information would have saved me 2 years of internally struggling over all the things that just didn't make sense. Then I dropped the bombshell on my poor wife. In hindsight, this was a huge mistake. I should have brought her along slowly as opposed to coming out as a full-on atheist. Mormons are an interesting breed when it comes to teaching children about God and families and how dependent we all are on others for our salvation. My wife can't be saved in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom without me, her spouse. And Mormons are taught how crucial it is for the father and husband to be a righteous priesthood holder who leads and guides the home and teaches the family the gospel. So for me to come out as a non-believer was extremely devastating to her. This was 1.5 years ago. I made a lot of mistakes back then when it came to telling others. I messed up so badly with her and my believing brother and sister. I put the brakes on telling others. And so I've been largely quiet about my beliefs since then. My wife's extended family suspects something's up. We've had no conversations with them about the subject. I'm still not sure how to tackle that one. I really want to be public with my new perspective and ideas, but it would be social suicide to come out as an atheist to my friends and family. My job and career could be affected as well. In the heart of Mormondom, one does not simply proclaim there is no God. Area code 660, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for calling the show. What do you have for us tonight?
I am an out atheist. I didn't want to. I don't know if it was a great idea to call in because this is a show for people who were kind of in the closet about it. But I just wanted to let everybody know who's listening that if you're afraid, there is a huge community that will support you. There's a massive community of atheists and free thinkers who are out there that are ready to support you in this, that are ready to help you and bring you in with open arms, that will absolutely love you and would love to hear your voice and hear your opinions on this matter. And if you're afraid, I understand how hard it is to come out to your family. My family is very devoutly religious, and it's extremely hard. It was very hard for me to come out to them, and it was a very emotional experience. Luckily for me, they were very supportive. Without saying that I'm right, essentially, they accepted that I have my own viewpoint. But there are outlets for you that you don't have to be alone in this. You can talk to people, and you can have those conversations and question things and not be afraid to talk about these things. Help yourself. It will free you so much, and it will help you so much in your life to be honest with yourself. Even if you're not honest with your family, find your friends that you can talk to about this, because keeping it inside will kill you. It will tear you apart.
Well said. Thanks for the call, and thanks for being a part of the show.
Thank you, Seth.
All right, take care. I had a few people who've gone on the Thinking Atheist Facebook page, right? and they will interact. Some people make a dummy account. I'm not exactly sure. I think if you join the page, it's public and everybody knows it. And if you comment, the family knows, and people will often ask, how can I be anonymous? And I don't really know. Some people use a different account or name or something. But what some have done is that they will go and they will find friendships in atheist communities. If they're going to Atheist Nexus or any of these online communities, and they will develop friendships, and they will find support, and they will find people who have their back. And then what will happen is that those people are then added to their social media friends list. They're a Facebook friend. And let's say they end up with 10 or 15 of those people. Let's say they make a lot of friends, and they're legitimate friends. It's not just anonymous names who happen to be atheists, but I think it's legitimate. They know these people, and they end up being part of their friends list. So then if they go on their Facebook page and they say something that challenges religion, where normally nobody else would be on their side or give them the time of day, or they'd be immediately surrounded by condescension and prayers and defriending or what have you. Well, instead, they happen to have 5, 10, 15 people who have their back, who can say, oh, yeah, that's absolute nonsense. In fact, here's a link to Scientific American. Here's a link to the Nature article about it. Here's a great video about whatever. Transitional fossils. Those types of things. And I'll tell you, when you've got somebody who's got your back, man, it's a good feeling. He's absolutely right. And, if this community functions in that way, it's something I've always wanted, is for people to feel like that's why I don't allow a whole lot of theist interaction on the social media pages. There's plenty of Christian websites and religious websites. There's plenty of room for them out there. I wanted a place where the atheist could find support. I'm not saying if a theist comes by and asks a legitimate question or wants to have some conversation, that's all right. But I say in the About section of the page that this is a proselytizing-free zone. If you're going to come by and do a drive-by and throw, Mentos commercial Jesus bumper stickers at us, bye, you're gone. I don't have the time for you. This community does not exist for you. It exists for the non-believer. This is a support mechanism for them. It's exactly what the Facebook, not necessarily even the forum, but the Facebook online community is really for the atheist. It's a place where they can go and just be safe. It's all good. Exchange ideas, make friends, challenge each other. I did a whole radio podcast a while back, which was huge. I thought it'd be popular. I had no idea it'd be this popular. It's one of our most listened to shows this quarter. It's called You're Not Alone and You're Not Crazy. If you need encouragement, look it up on Blog Talk Radio or on my website under the podcast tab at thethinkingatheist.com. The show is called You're Not Alone and You're Not Crazy. And maybe it will encourage you. There's so much more I'd like to get to tonight, but voice failing, I'd like to finish with an email and with an article on We Are Atheism that lists 10 tips for coming out, should you choose to do so. The email says this: I usually listen to your show when I'm working a contract 90 miles from home. The drive goes by so quickly listening to your wonderful show. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. I first found your site when I was trying to dig myself out of an alt-med and woo-woo delusion. Your interview with the Skepdoc gave me the clearly explained perspective on vaccinations and chiropractic, etc. I was looking for. By the way, for those curious about that show, it's called A World Full of Woo. And I'll try to remember in my medicated state to go back and add links to both of those shows in the description box so you guys can just find it. Back to the letter. I seriously wanted the truth about vaccines, but to that point had only been to science-type sites that called people like me idiots. Not helpful, and thank you for pointing out on your site that using terms like religitard and creatard is not the way to help people find their way out of delusion. And before I get to the closeted atheist part, I want to share that having grown up on the coast, my irrational fear... Oh, we did a fear-based show. My irrational fear is that of falling through the cracks at the pier. It still freaks me out. It's so wild hearing people reference all these other shows. That's cool. I'm a mostly closeted atheist for a couple of reasons. I don't share that I'm an atheist online because I became an atheist after starting a blog where I debunk one particular New Age charlatan. I discovered I was an atheist through the blogging process, covering various critical thinking topics. I also remain an atheist in my community because I'm a self-employed single mom, and I'm not willing to jeopardize my income at this time. I'm making plans to move and pursue other career options, at which point I'll look at things differently. I also don't want to jeopardize social relationships for my 5-year-old. The longer I'm an atheist, and it's only been a couple of years, the more telling my child the truth becomes more important than all of the above. I suspect she will be the one to out me. She asked me yesterday if I liked Jesus, and I said, no, not really. I'll be interested to see if she shares that with anyone. I generally tell people that we're not churchgoers if it comes up. My parents are nominal Christians, but definitely believers. I stopped sharing my spiritual beliefs with them after going from astrology to adult born-again Christian to New Age woo. Someday we'll talk about it. I wanted to add that I love how kind you are with regard to religious people. You can love the believer but not the belief, to coin a phrase. I really appreciate that about you, and listening to your show has helped soften my heart to some Christian people I know. Thank you for that. Thank you for the message. We Are Atheism has a list of tips for those who want to come out as an atheist. I won't read the entire thing to you. I'll just list them and maybe give you some bullet points, and I'll put the link in the description box here. The first tip is this: understand Christian apologetics and how to respond to them. It's a good point, because if you start telling people the reasons that you are not a believer in whatever religion it is, there's a good chance, especially in your culture, and here it's going to be Christianity in my culture, you've got to be able to speak to what it is they're defending. The awesome part is the vast majority of atheists I know their Bible tons better than the religious. I love it when an atheist and a theist get into a Bible debate. I just love it, because the atheist knows the Bible. I mean, they've read it, and they get it, and they understand that the content of the book is in many cases, one of the main reasons they walked away. Number 2, don't be too confrontational. Remember where they're coming from and help them to understand where you're coming from. Trying to win the debate or convert them is not going to happen in this conversation. This is not the time for that talk. So arguing with them over facts is just dodging the bigger issue of them accepting you as a person. Number 3, actively listen. And that doesn't mean just sit there and nod your head. Make eye contact. Repeat the question just to be sure you heard it correctly. Do a synopsis of what the other person said to ensure that understanding has occurred. Number 4, don't use personal anecdotes. Be sure to stick to discussing your atheism. Don't bring up negative past experiences in the family, or who was a bad parent or sibling. Don't use past trauma, drug addiction, a form of abuse as an excuse. You're not just mad at God. Remember to be rational and show them you've reasoned your way to atheism. 5, the no true Scotsman explanation. This is common for religious friends and family to rationalize your disbelief, your backslidden nature, by saying that you were never a real believer at all. And they'll say you didn't really understand what God wanted in your life. You must have been faking it. Don't let them get away with this. There are millions of former believers and pastors and ministers and priests and rabbis that are now atheists. You cannot say that none of them were devout or that they didn't get it. Number 6, be prepared to walk away. Come back to the conversation when cooler heads prevail. If things are beginning to get heated, please use I statements and easy-to-understand messages like, when you say this, it makes me feel this, which leads me to think this. And if that isn't enough, agree to disagree and walk away from the situation for no longer than 2 weeks. Don't be argumentative. People meet aggression with more aggression. Stay calm. Stay focused. While you can educate your friends and family, don't allow yourself to be dragged into a fight. But that great poster out there that says, don't raise your voice, improve your argument. I mean, I argue with passion sometimes, but, if you see 2 people back and forth and one person's frothing at the mouth and banging on the table and the other guy's got a level head, oh, that's awesome. Number 7, give it time. As much as it might hurt, some people might need time to process this information. You're not going to handle it all in one meeting. Could be weeks, months, years. Number 8, agree on the parameters of the conversation. Are we going to stick to Christianity? Are we going to talk about all religions? We're going to talk about morals. Where do morals come from? Which means you'll need to understand more about these things, like the basis of morality. Number 9, face it, talking over food is easier. Most times, this is a better conversation to have over a meal. Take them out to dinner, especially if you're coming out to your parents. It allows you to have something to focus on other than their reaction to you. You need a pause, you take a drink. They need time to process, take a bite, order dessert. It's okay. Kind of relaxes things a little bit. Number 10, be a proud atheist. Don't act ashamed. Make sure your body language reads as open. Don't cross your arms or legs. Maintain eye contact. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Keep your chin up. Keep your head up. Keep your shoulders back. Your posture maintained. Speak with a clear and level tone. It sounds silly. You're delivering a very important message, and you want to make sure everybody understands it. Speak in a clear, concise language. Don't use metaphors. Don't use riddles. Be loud and clear. And finally, and they list this as 10.5 on their list of 1 to 10. The answer, I don't know, is okay. If you don't have an answer to one of their questions, it's okay. I don't know is an answer. You don't have to be an expert at everything in the universe. You can tell someone to check out some good resources. You can tell them that you'll check something out. That's a good question. I'll go check it out. I'll do some reading. Right? If you don't know, you know what? I do not know. I don't know what caused the Big Bang. I don't know. This does not mean, by the way, that they get to paint a magic man into the answer category. All right? And I wouldn't say that to them at that moment. I would say, we don't know. Science doesn't know. Science is seeking the answer, honestly seeking the answer. We hope to one day know the answer. We'll continue working toward the answer tirelessly. For those who are looking at the rest of us like we're from outer space, wondering what the big deal is, and I know the comment sections are going to have them. Bunch of whiny babies. Bunch of cowards. I'm out here living it. I've accepted the consequences. I lost this and I lost that and I lost a job and I lost a family and I've done this and I put myself out there and everybody else is sitting on their hands and it's not fair and they're all a bunch of pansies. I can already see it. By the way, if somebody says that to you, just brush them off. They don't get you. They won't get you. It's not about them. It's about you. Okay? It's about you. It's about you coming to the point when you're ready to step out and say, all right, everybody, I'd like to tell you something. And I didn't come to this conclusion lightly, but I did come to it honestly. I came to a point where I really honestly examined all the things that I had learned and read in the scriptures, all the things that had been taught from the pulpit. And I compared them to hard science and geology and cosmology and history. And I ask questions, and I've gone through this journey over this period of time. And I've come to a point now where I personally no longer believe it. And I'm totally good. I'm happy. I've never felt better about my life. I've never felt like the world fit better than it does right now. I myself have found my voice. I found my own skin, and I'm going to live in it. I'm carving my own path instead of a path that was inherited or carved out by somebody else. And I'm excited about the future. And I love life. And I'm still the same person. I'm a moral person. I'm still a lover of people. I'm still a good parent. I'm still a cherished friend. I'm still trustworthy. I'm still all these things. And you'll see that in my life if you give me the chance. And if you have questions about any of the stuff that I've brought up, just come and ask me about it. Don't preach it. You don't get to come and just pound me over the head and preach at me. I'm not talking about that. But if you want to have some conversation and a dialogue, I'll buy you a beer. Ask me anything you want. And I'll answer honestly. And if I don't know the answer, I'll just tell you, I don't know. But maybe together we can go and find out. I hope the show's been an encouragement to you. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And thanks for putting up with my sort of gravelly voice tonight. I'm so glad we did the show. And I honestly really do understand how difficult it can be out there. The tide is turning. more and more people are coming out and standing up, and you know what? It's going to get easier. My hope is it's going to get easier in the months and years ahead. So take care out there in your own special circumstance. I wish you the very, very best. And thank you for supporting and listening to the show. I'll see you next Tuesday night on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.